Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. I'm delighted you're with us in class today. And we broadcast 2 hours from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains, 9 a.m. through 11 a.m. Central Time, and tape delayed in other parts of the country and all over the world. If you'd like to call us, we'll pay for the call. 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. If you want to listen on your telephone, 605-477-3249. Well, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects today. Taxes. Taxes. I'm allergic to paying taxes. I really am. And I was listening to GCN during the commercial breaks, and Dan Pilla's got an advertisement on GCN, and he says there's no such thing as a hopeless tax problem. He's absolutely right. Welcome, Dan Pilla.
Hey, Vince, how you doing?
I am really doing well. I am. I'm delighted. And class, let me give you Dan Pilla's website, danpilla.com. And I'll spell that for you. D-A-N, as in Daniel, Pilla, P-I-L-L-A.com. Dan Pilla, D-A-N-P-I-L-L-A.com. And Dan, I'm really fascinated. I was reading your story about, 1974, the IRS. Here's what it says on your website. In 1974, the IRS seized my father's business for back tax debts. They padlocked the doors and auctioned the equipment for a few cents on the dollar. That's how it starts.
Yeah, that was the start, Vincent, for sure.
Yeah. Can you tell us the rest of the story? How did it go?
Well, let me give you a little more background. Yeah. My dad had a small business here in our hometown of St. Paul, Minnesota. He got behind on his employees' withholding taxes. He had, 5, 6 employees, whatever it was, in his little printing business he had. Got behind on the employees' withholding taxes, and as I said, and as you said, in 1974, IRS seized the shop, padlocked the doors, and auctioned the equipment off for a couple cents on the dollar. And then in 1977, 78, right in there somewhere, they tried to seize and sell our family home. And I came home one day, and my mom was sitting at the table with this letter from the IRS in her hand, and she hands it to me, and she says, "What do you make of this?" Well, I read it, and I said, "Well, it looks like they're going to try to seize the house." And she says, "Well, what do we do about that?" And of course, Vincent, I had no idea what to do about that at the time. I was just a kid, and had no background in law in general, never mind tax law in particular. And so, what I did is I went over to the local law library, local law school on the other side of St. Paul, just on the other side of downtown, and not 3 miles from our house. And I just went into the law library, and I started fumbling around in the Internal Revenue Code, which I was pointed to by the librarian. Hey, where's the tax law? And she points to this row of books. And I start fumbling around in this thing, not even knowing what I was looking for or what I was doing. But I did stumble onto an area of the tax code that deals with taxpayers' rights issues and limits the power of the IRS. And so I start reading in this section of the law, and I didn't get 6 pages into it and discovered that the IRS was proceeding illegally to seize the home. And so I did what any kid would do under the circumstances. I sued the IRS. And just using the materials that I found in the law library, I pasted together a lawsuit and sued the IRS and challenged their action of trying to seize my mother's house to pay my dad's tax liability. It was his business. It was his employment tax liability. She had nothing to do with it. She didn't owe the tax, and yet they're trying to take, a piece of property that she has an interest in to pay his taxes. That didn't seem all that right to me. And in fact, that's exactly what that particular provision of the tax code talked about was keeping the IRS from taking property of one taxpayer to settle the debt of another taxpayer. And so, I filed this lawsuit, and I've pretty soon found myself in a federal courtroom in Minneapolis in front of a federal judge, and the IRS flew this attorney in from Washington, D.C. to have my case thrown out. And so I said to the judge, look, Judge, the law says this, and they're trying to do something that's contrary to law. They shouldn't be allowed to get away with it. And that was about the extent of my argument. And that was about that's about all I said. And I sat down, and this attorney stood up, and he started, blathering all these things about court cases this and statutes that, and I didn't know what the guy was talking about. And when he was all finished, the judge looked at him and pointed at me and said, he's right. And he slammed the gavel, and I thought, well, this is easy. And so I was able to stop the IRS. And the interesting thing about the story, Vincent, is that in between the time that my dad's print shop got sold, in between the time he got in trouble with the IRS in the first place and that day in that courtroom in Minneapolis, he got involved in what was called, what's called the tax protester movement, and you know what that is. There are these people that say the tax laws are illegal, they're unconstitutional, that the United States government is not, the IRS is not part of the United States government, and it's a violation of the Fifth. All these various arguments, right? That you've heard. Well, my dad was hip deep in that stuff by the time by the time I was in that courtroom in 1978, 79. So this is how long ago we're talking about this having happened. And these arguments were around at that time, and they weren't working. And so, my dad's tax protester buddies were in the courtroom that day watching the proceedings, and they saw what the judge did, and they heard what he said. And so and of course, they all had tax problems, right? Because they're all tax protesters, and they either have problems because they're tax protesters, or they're tax protesters because they have problems. One way or the other, they all had tax problems. And so by the time I got home to my mother's house, they were lined up at the door and said, Dan, can you help me with my tax problem? I said, sure, I'm undefeated, baby. Let's go here. And so that was it. I mean, it was kind of an instant practice, and I was dealing with all these various enforcement cases at that time, and cut my teeth on these difficult, challenging enforcement cases.
Dan, in a previous life, I was a computer jockey. And had a computer manufacturing business in a small rural village and county in Virginia. And as a guy who built computers and networks, I had all kinds of customers. And a couple of those customers were tax preparers. And I got to spend a lot of time installing software and, making the network robust to, handle all of these tax documents that were being prepared. And it was year after year because the tax code changes every year. And there's preliminary software, and then there's the final version and so forth. So I spent a lot of time in the back room and in the offices of the people who were preparing taxes. Customers would come in for this tax preparation company, and they always said the same thing. They'd bring in a bag of receipts, and they would say to the tax preparer or the owner of the business, look, here are my receipts. I don't want to pay a lot of taxes, and don't get me audited. And it was always the same thing. And those are, in my world, mutually exclusive. If you don't want to pay taxes, you have to take it to the limit, and there's a risk that you're going to be audited. But that's okay if you do everything above board. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree with that. And I've heard people say that, to me 1,000 times. And Vincent, I've seen the other side of it as well, where people will say, you know what, I know I'm entitled to these various deductions, but I don't want to claim them because I'm afraid of an audit. Well, just because you don't claim deductions doesn't mean you're not going to be audited. And the only thing it guarantees when you don't claim deductions you're entitled to is that you pay taxes you don't owe. And in this case, and my response to those people, Vincent, is exactly what my response would be to your scenario, and that is, look, if the deductions are legitimate, claim them, and if you are audited by the IRS, just simply be prepared to prove that your deductions are legitimate, that you in fact incurred the expenses that you say on the tax return you incurred. As long as you can prove your tax return is correct, there's no downside to an audit other than the fact that, you got the time and the hassle and so forth of producing the records. But if you organize yourself when you file your tax return as if you're going to be audited, in other words, you assume that the IRS is going to look at your return, you have everything ready to go when you prepare your tax return, because you have to have everything organized to begin with when you prepare the return. You can't prepare a tax return unless you got the stuff all organized for yourself. So just keep it organized and make sure that it's available if the return is challenged. Because here's the thing you need to understand. Every single tax return that's filed goes through a pretty intensive screening process by the IRS's computers. And every single line of the tax return, and the tax return goes through what they call a discriminant income function system analysis, all right? It's called the DIF program, DIF. And what it means is that every line of your tax return is compared with national and regional statistical averages for a person in your same income category and profession. If any one line of your return is out of sync with those averages, the difference is scored. It's called a DIF score. The higher the score, the more likely you are to be audited. And so when they select, and about 2/3 of all the returns selected for face-to-face audit are selected through this DIF program. And so just because the computer selects your return for audit doesn't mean the return is wrong. And this is what people need to understand. They think that because they've been selected for audit, they made a mistake and they got caught, and now it's going to cost them money. And that's not true at all. What happens is the computer says, this line looks funny compared to the averages. It doesn't mean it's a mistake. And so now you step up with your receipts and you prove that your tax return is correct, that particular entry is correct. You got the documents to support it. You're good to go. You're not going to face an audit. You're going to keep your money in your pocket where it belongs. Or not. It's not that you're not going to face an audit. It's that you're going to survive the audit without having to pay additional money to the IRS.
Mm-hmm. And the IRS has a condensed rule book. We can talk a little bit about that when we come back. Class is called Publication 17. Publication, the number 1 and 7. And you can look that up. You can just go to your favorite search engine, type in pub, P-U-B, space 17, and you can download it from irs.gov. It's the rules as they publish them. The rules at which you can then learn how to play the game. We'll be right back. And I like avoiding paying taxes. I really do, because it's my money, and money doesn't grow on trees around my neck of the woods here at the farm. So I have to work really hard for our money. And I just did a quick calculation during the commercial break. I've been preparing my own taxes since 1976. So that's about 42 years. So for 42 years, I have been doing exactly what Dan Pilla was talking about. So if you prepare and organize and categorize your tax documents, and you mark on them why you did what you did when you did it, and then if you download Publication 17 and you write in the margins why you did what you did, your audit is already prepared, exactly as he said. And so if you get audited next year, the year after, or up to 3 years later, you just pull out that folder, you've got your receipts, you've got it documented, and you know why you did what you did. You're ready to go. You just review it, you spend a couple hours reviewing it, and then you take the whole family to the audit as an educational experience. And that's another tax deduction. Dan, what do you think?
Well, I agree with everything up until taking the whole family to the audit. I don't know why you couldn't do that.
Well, I've done it.
I've done it. Not. Put it this way: I've had the IRS challenge in the past dependent exemptions on a tax return. Well, I don't believe you've got 6 kids. I don't believe you've got 7 kids. Yeah, well, let me march them in here, and they can all shake hands with you. And so we've certainly done that in the past, no question about that. But getting to the hardcore stuff here, Vincent, what you talk about organizing your documents, was consistent with what I was saying. Because here's the thing, I've heard people say this 1,000 times to me. Well, this audit is for 4 years ago. I can't remember what happened 4 years ago. Well, that's true. Most people cannot remember what happened 4 years ago. But when you are putting the documents together, it's not 4 years ago. It's contemporaneous. Well, let me give you a perfect example. Suppose you're a salesperson and you're on the road traveling and you have to keep track of your travel and your meal expenses. All right? When you incur those expenses, you get receipts. And so here we are in July of 2018. If you're a traveling salesperson and you're traveling around in July of 2018, you're keeping your receipts now and you're making your notes now. Those are contemporaneous records. You're doing all that when it's fresh in your mind. You can't do that 3 or 4 years later when you're trying to prepare for an audit. At that point in time, you're not going to remember. Your records aren't going to be contemporaneous. You might be missing certain things. Your memory certainly is going to be foggy, no question about that. And so that's why it's important to do this stuff on a contemporaneous basis so that you've got the documents organized and you got all your notes. You mentioned notes in the margins. This is very important to put contemporaneous notes on these records so that you've got all of the reference material you need so you can explain exactly to an auditor 3 or 4 years later. Well, this receipt was for my travel to Milwaukee, and here's what I did in Milwaukee, and these are the people I saw when I was in Milwaukee, and this is the nature of the business we had when I was. Now it's all fresh because you have the notes.
You know, this afternoon after the broadcast, I'm going to be traveling from our farm into the big city, Springfield, Missouri. And it's about a 100-mile round trip. I need to get some plumbing parts for the farm. It's all legitimate. Well, that 100-mile trip is a deduction at 53 cents per mile.
Sure.
That's a $53 tax deduction. Sure. Absolutely all legitimate. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to write on the receipt that I get, you know, at the supply store that has these plumbing parts, I'm going to put how many miles and why I bought it, and I'm going to put it in the folder, and that's another tax deduction. The plumbing parts exactly right. Plus the 53 cents a mile.
Right. That's exactly right. Now, here's the other thing you want to keep in mind. In my book, How to Win Your Tax Audit, I got a chapter in the book that talks about what specific records are needed to prove various deductions. One of the problems, the single biggest problem, Vincent, this is the single biggest problem that people have going through a tax audit. 70% of all of the adjustments in favor of the IRS that are made in tax audits are made because taxpayers either don't have or the IRS has convinced them that they don't have adequate records to prove their deductions. And so, you know, when we come back from the break, we can talk about exactly what those records consist of and how to overcome that.
There you go. That's great. And I've got an example that I can share with you about exactly that. Great. Dan Pilla, danpilla.com. We'll be right back. Class, Dan Pilla's with us. I'll spell his name for you. Dan, Pilla, and .com, danpilla.com. He's written some books. How to Get Tax Amnesty, The IRS Problem Solver, How to Win Your Tax Audit, and others. So danpilla.com. Dan, the IRS audit is an adversarial situation. It's you versus the IRS. And the IRS auditor's position, as I've seen it, is, I don't believe you unless you can prove it. Please continue with what you were going to say.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Vincent, and that's what I was alluding to before the break, is the biggest mistake that taxpayers make. As I said, 70% of the adjustments that are made by the IRS in favor of the IRS in tax audits are based on taxpayers not having records, or at least the IRS making people believe they don't have records. And the reason for the problem is that people do not understand that they have the burden of proof when they go through a tax audit. You need to understand that in an audit situation, the IRS never has to prove you made a mistake. You have to prove you did it right. The burden of proof is on the taxpayer. Now, if the government accuses you of robbing a grocery store, they got to prove your guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. But when the IRS says, "Well, you owe us $10,000," they don't have to prove you owe the $10,000. You have to prove you don't owe the $10,000. And so this is what the challenge is in a tax situation. And so you got to understand how to carry that burden of proof. In my book, How to Win Your Tax Audit, this is the most comprehensive treatment of the audit process that's ever been written for the public, so that you understand how to come out of that audit with your money in your pocket.
Yep. And let me give you an example, class, of what we're talking about. So in 1979, I believe it was 1979, I was hauled into the IRS for an audit. But I was moving. I was moving to California to start a company. Well, the audit followed me from the East Coast, 3,000 miles to California. I thought it'd never do that. Oh, yeah, it did. And so during the audit, the auditor said, I see you've got a charitable contribution here. Can you show me receipts? And I said, absolutely. So I reached into the folder, and I had the receipts for the checks, canceled checks for the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, the church, all the charitable contributions that we made. And it added up to a round number. And I said to the auditor, so why am I here? And he said, well, this was suspicious. You've got this charitable contribution line item, and it's $500, and it looks suspicious. So I added up all the checks, with him, and it came out to 500.00. All legitimate, all canceled checks. And right then and there, in 1980, when I had the audit, it followed me from 1979 to 1980, I decided I will never do a round number again. I don't even pump gas to a round number. I don't. Because I was audited because my charitable contributions came up to $500. And it was a great learning experience. And did I bring our children? Absolutely. When I go to audits, I didn't have children back then, but in subsequent audits, I bring the children. They're little, and I want them to see what it's like so that they're not afraid of an audit. They can see what mommy and daddy are doing in a government setting, which is, pretty, well, for most people, it's pretty stressful. So that was my example. Have you seen that before, Dan Pilla?
Well, yeah, there's no question about it. There's a number of ways that the IRS uses to select returns for audit. As I said, the DIF program is the biggest one, but there's no question that they use these other methods of looking at things, and entries on a tax return that are all neat round numbers do tend to look suspicious, no question about that. But again, it gets back to what we've been talking about here during the course of the program, and that is, do you have the records to prove the deduction? And if you have the records to prove the deduction, then I don't care if it's a round number. Now, here's the other thing I talk about in How to Win Your Tax Audit. I talk about audit proofing the tax return. The IRS has a form 8275. They don't talk about it, and they don't encourage people to use it. It's called a disclosure statement. And the disclosure statement, form 8275, I call it the audit proof form because it allows you to provide information with the tax return that answers any potential questions raised in the return. And by doing that, just for example, Vincent, if you had used the 8275 with your tax return and reported and explained on your 8275 your charitable contributions, and you listed them all out and the amounts, and put it right on the 8275, then the IRS would say, well, this $500, this nice, neat, round number looks suspicious, but then there's the 8275 that breaks it all down, and they can see, well, yeah, it adds up to $500 because we have $100 here, $200 there, another $100 here, and so on, and there it is. So I encourage people to use that 8275. I show you how to use it in the book, and it's a very important part of the strategy of putting some insulation between you and the IRS.
I love it, Dan Pilla. I really do. And what I do is something that's probably not appreciated by the IRS, is I write notes all over the return, even in places where they don't want me to write notes. So when they look at mine, I think they say, oh, man, this let's go find some lower hanging fruit than this one. And that's a good phrase, because the low hanging fruit is really what the audits are all about. There's no question about that. Listen, let's put this in perspective here. People think of the IRS and they think of the United States government and unlimited resources and unlimited power and unlimited time and unlimited manpower and all of that. And that's simply not the case with the IRS. And let me put this in perspective for you. In 2018, there were approximately 150 million individual income tax returns filed with the agency. There was another 100-plus million business tax returns filed with the IRS. So we're talking about north of 250 million tax returns filed with the IRS in 2018. And that's the pattern year after year, and they grow a little bit every single year in terms of numbers just because population is growing. The IRS has plus or minus 85,000 employees. Now, that number is going to go up a little bit this year, but it's not going to go up significantly. So let's call it 85,000 employees.
And of those 85,000 employees, only about 20,000 of them are auditors. So, Vincent, how is the IRS going to take 20,000 employees and audit 250 million tax returns? Mm-hmm. The answer is they aren't going to. It's not going to happen. So they have to use a profiling process. We hate profiling in this country, but the IRS is masterful at using financial profiling to select people for audit based on the ultimate concept of low-hanging fruit. Who can we go after that is most likely to produce results for us in terms of more revenue? And they've got various computer programs they use to screen the tax returns. I talked about the DIF program, but there's other ones as well. They use these computer programs to effectively financially profile these tax returns so they can target the ones that are likely to produce the highest result of the highest dollar for them, bang for the buck in terms of their audits. And that's why it's important. That's just one reason why it's important to use the disclosure statement when you prepare your tax returns, and another reason why it's important to have these contemporaneous records, because even if the computer program thinks that your return is off base and thinks that you're low-hanging fruit, it doesn't mean that you actually are low-hanging fruit. And as long as you got your documents in order, the way I show you in the book, How to Win Your Tax Audit, then you are going to be able to get out of there with your money in your pocket.
You know, Dan Pilla, I believe that most people would be embarrassed if they were selected for an IRS audit, but I don't think they should be embarrassed. I've even talked about how I've been audited and challenged on the radio. I'm telling everybody, yeah, just because you've been selected for an audit doesn't mean you've committed tax fraud or done anything wrong. It's just they want you to prove it. That's all.
Yeah. No, there's no question about it. But I'll tell you in my experience, Vincent, it's not so much the audit that embarrasses people, although you're right, a lot of people are embarrassed by the idea of an audit. But what really is embarrassing to folks is when they have a tax liability that they can't pay. They owe the IRS money, 30, 40, 50 grand, and they can't pay it. And that's where the circumstances get very difficult, because the IRS can enforce collection with wage levies and bank levies and so on. And that's why it's vitally important for you to understand your rights in the collection process. My book, How to Get Tax Amnesty, walks you through that. It is the comprehensive guide that will walk you through the process. This book, Vincent, has been out since 1992. It's gone through 9 different revisions. I just did another edit on it not that long ago where we rewrote the thing from cover to cover. This book has helped hundreds of thousands of people to deal with the IRS, and if you've got a collection problem, that's where you need to go to get your problem solved.
Dan, what will it cost someone in our broadcast classroom today to get your book on how to get tax amnesty or how to win your tax audit or the IRS problem solver?
Yeah, there's different prices for the books, Vincent. The How to Get Tax Amnesty is about $50 for the book, and then there's a small shipping and handling charge. How to Win Your Tax Audit's about $30, and the IRS Problem Solver is about $20. And so these are inexpensive books that are very, very effective. And as I said, they've helped hundreds of thousands of people across the country to deal with IRS issues and to avoid expensive attorneys and accountants and get the problem solved without getting cleaned out. You just go to my website, danpilla.com. That's one word, danpilla.com, and you got all the information right there.
Dan, I spent 42 years learning how to do this. And for $100, you can get several of your books that would put way more information out than what I've been able to determine, and that is less. That is less than what it would cost to go to an H&R Block with a little desk and a little cubicle surround at Walmart to have your taxes prepared by a guy who has no clue.
Well, and that's the point, Vincent. There's about 60% of the people that file tax returns in America use a paid preparer. Another 20% use some kind of a computer program. But let's talk about the paid preparers. There's a great number of them, and I don't know what the percentage is, but there's a great number of them that are using the chains to prepare their tax returns. And these guys, Vincent, know nothing about defending tax returns when the IRS questions it. They know nothing about it.
And there are other people who use TurboTax that you got to buy a new copy of every single year, and so it's obsolete after you file. Why would you do that? Why not read Publication 17, learn it yourself, get a few books from Dan Pilla, and start saving money right now? We'll be right back. Class, we are just scratching the surface about taxes, and if you'd like to contact Dan Pilla, you can go to usaprepares.com, click on the Instructors tab, and there's a link right there. And you click on the link, it'll take you right to his website, danpilla.com. Dan, I've traveled the country from the Mississippi to the east, and I've talked about taxes in seminar rooms. And I've had lots of people in seminars, and I talk about all kinds of things, preparedness related. And one of the questions I ask is, so how many of you prepare your own taxes? Only a few in the room will raise their hands. And the next question I ask is, so how many prepare your taxes? Only a few. Who prepares your taxes? And it's always the same answer. And I'll use the name Connie, for example. So Connie's great. She prepares our taxes. She knows everything. And we don't get audited. Now, that name can be Joe or Bob or Harry or Bill or whatever.
Right.
It's always the same. Why?
Well, people have complete faith in their accountants. I mean, that's what the answer is. And I hear the same thing. I say, well, my accountant so-and-so, he knows what he's doing. He's been doing this for years. Or, the other thing I hear is, well, she used to work for the IRS.
Yeah,
so
right.
She really knows the inside tricks, and she knows the inside angles. And so because she worked for the IRS, she's really the one to prepare my tax return for me. And listen, there are good tax return preparers out there. There isn't any question about it. But I encourage people, if you're going to use a tax pro, that you need to find somebody who's in the business of tax preparation full time. A lot of these tax preparers, in fact, I would argue that most of the tax preparers out there are part time. They prepare tax returns 3 months out of the year, and then they sharpen saws the other 9 months, and who knows what else they do. Those are not the kind of people you want preparing your tax return for you if you're going to use a professional. You need to get somebody who's got a lot of experience, who's in the business full time, that makes it their business to stay on top of this, on top of the tax laws, because they're constantly changing. Almost every single day there's something new when it comes to the IRS and the law and how the law is enforced and interpreted and so on. And so you got to have somebody that's in the business of doing this, and it's not a part-time gig for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you get that letter from the IRS, and it says that you're going to be audited, and so you call Connie, and you say, Connie, remember me? This is Vincent. You did my taxes. Remember me? Yeah, I remember you. Oh, yeah. You're the funny-looking guy. Yeah, that's right. That's me. So, Connie, I need your help. I'm being audited. And Connie says, I'm in Florida. You go, well, yeah, but I need your help. But I'm in Florida. Connie, I need your help. Okay, so you want to fly me back to your state from Florida? I'm going to need a hotel and meals, and I'm going to charge you X number of dollars per day. Is that what you want me to do? Think about that, class. That's a scenario that can happen very easily.
Well, it can, Vincent, and there's really a more likely scenario, and that is Connie says, you know what? I don't do audits. I don't handle audits. You need to get somebody who knows how to handle an audit. I do tax return preparation, but I don't handle audits. And here's the other thing. Here's the other thing you need to understand. A lot of these tax return preparers are not actually admitted to practice before the IRS. And so if you go through an audit and you have to do an appeal, even if they are willing to represent you in the audit, they may not be able to represent you in the appeal because they're not admitted to practice to the IRS. So that's another issue.
So, Dan Pilla, if we come to the conclusion that 1, read Publication 17, 2, prepare your own taxes, 3, get a few of your books, and so that you will save an enormous amount of money, way more than the books cost, and have the peace of mind that if you are audited, you are armed and ready and prepared right now before the audit, and so you don't have to live your life saying, I hope we don't get. Well, I don't want to get the mail today because maybe we're getting a letter from the IRS. Do you agree with that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No question about it. You need to understand what your rights are. If you don't know what your rights are, Vincent, you don't have any. And the fact of the matter is taxpayers have so many rights when they're dealing with the IRS, they don't have to worry about getting run over.
And Dan, if someone's in a position where they are being hammered by the IRS and they are being threatened with losing their home or their business or their assets, can they call you?
Absolutely. Those are the kinds of cases we handle all day long, Vincent. They can call me at 1-800-34-NO-TAX. That's 800-34-NOTAX. Or go to my website, danpilla.com.
Dan, I hope that you'll be able to come back again and again and again as your schedule permits. I love
absolutely, Vincent. Give me a call, and if I can help you, I'm happy to.
Great. Thanks so much, Dan Pilla.
My pleasure.
danpilla.com. Everyone all set, cocked, locked, hour number 2 of USA Prepares. I'm delighted to be broadcasting with Brandy Brogden. And there's a link to Brandy Brogden's Facebook page on usaprepares.com. And please click on the Instructors tab, and you'll find Brandy Brogden. And so Brandy is a vice chairman let me say it this way, vice chairman, marketing director / founder at Youngevity. And we're going to talk about how you can start your own home-based business. Now, when I first thought about multi-level marketing, I really wasn't interested in spending too much time with it. Well, I can tell you that for many of you, this will work, and you will be able to get extreme tax deductions. And if you want to know what I'm talking about, you can go to YouTube, and you can type in Vincent Finelli, and you can type in extreme tax deductions on the Ron Gibson channel. Ron Gibson. Thanks so much, Ron Gibson. And you'll find my thoughts on taking deductions for your home-based business. It will be unbelievable. For many people, you'll be able to put $5,000 in your pocket. As simple as that, by starting your home-based business. So in 1962, I was 10 years old, and my dad had a push mower, and he would struggle with cutting the 1 acre of lawn that we had, and then he borrowed his brother's walk-behind 18-inch self-propelled reel mower with a 3-quarter horsepower Briggs & Stratton engine, and then he bought one of those garden tractors, a 5.5 horsepower wheel horse. And I used to use that, and that's what I learned how to cut the lawn on a tiny garden tractor. Well, next thing that I knew, I was cutting lawns in the neighborhood, and I was in business back in 1964 at 12 years old. So I know what it's like to have a little business. I love it. And there's so many reasons why you should have a home-based business. Brandy Brogden, welcome.
Fantastic. Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's doing fabulous. Good morning, Mr. Vincent. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing really well. So, Brandy, you've started, we'll call it a home-based business. You've been doing it for what, about 14 years?
Yes, sir. This December the 5th will be 15 years for me in Youngevity.
Mm-hmm. And I've seen you traveling around with Dr. Joel Wallach. You've been lots of places, and all of that travel is a tax deduction. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So, Brandy, how did you get involved in? What made you start your home-based business?
Vincent, that's a great question. I came to Youngevity simply because I was looking for products for my son. My son had been struggling with asthma for over 5 years. He was on 6 prescriptions at 6 years old, and they wanted to add one more, and Mama said, not today. And so I came looking for products to help him. And once I got my son's health under control, I stayed for the opportunity.
Okay. So you bought Youngevity products, and
yes, sir.
And so you paid for them. In order to do that, to get the maximum discounts, didn't you have to sign up and pay $10?
Well, yes, sir. Back in the day, it was only a $6 fee when I joined. Mm-hmm. And so I did pay that $6 fee, and I got the products at a little bit of a savings. And so we've moved ahead, 15 years later. It's now a $25 sign-on fee. Once you pay the $25, you're in as an associate or a distributor, whichever you like to be called. That's going to be a one-time, lifetime fee. You never have to pay that again. And so, yes, sir, that was the way I came aboard.
Okay. And so how did this impact your life, Brandy Brogden, doing...
Well, thanks. Mm-hmm. That's a great question, sir.
Yeah,
in the beginning, whenever I very first started with longevity, I was also cleaning houses. So I was making about $800 a week cleaning houses. Really didn't see the opportunity there with longevity at all. And when the stock market really tanked out in the later 2000s, my money dropped down a good bit. And so I began to take another look at longevity. About 4 or 5 years later is when I really started working my business. And so it really made a huge impact in my life because it afforded me to do things and allowed me to do things that I've never done before. 1, travel the world. 2, I'm living on a lake that I've wanted to live on for 40 years. I just bought me a Toyota FJ Cruiser, which is a vehicle that I've wanted for 14 years. So if you work hard at it, a lot of people misconstrue network marketing and they think it's some kind of pyramid scheme or some kind of get-rich-quick scheme. But I'm here to tell you, Mr. Vincent, it is nothing of that sort. There's nothing like that going on at longevity. It is strictly, you tell a friend, bring a friend to the table, and the person signs up, starts taking the products. They start sharing the message with their friends and family, and longevity sends them a nice check as a referral check.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you mentioned you bought a Toyota Cruiser, is that a tax deduction for you?
It absolutely is a tax deduction. And I just took my girls down to Panama City for 5 days, and I went in and sampled 3 or 4 health food stores in Panama City, and we took the whole Panama City trip off as a tax deduction because I worked for about an hour and a half while I was down there.
So your plan was to go down there and to expand your business, and by doing so, whether you were successful or not, it was still a tax deduction.
Amen. Yes, sir.
At 53 cents a mile. I know that's what it is, or was last year for tax preparation purposes. Okay. So if you look back, do you have any regrets?
Absolutely not.
Okay. All right. So you've started this business. Tell us what it's like.
You know, a lot of people misconstrue network marketing, and they think that it's, that it's just kind of it grows itself. But I learned very quickly on, it is not something that will grow itself. You really have to get a mindset in there for it. And what I mean by that is if you treat it like a hobby, it will pay you like a hobby. So for the first 5 years, I never got my check over $500, simply because I was just doing it when I could. I had children that were doing drum lessons, and I was coaching soccer, and I had 3 kids in school, and all kinds of things were going on. So there was very little time for longevity. After my kids began to graduate from school and things began to process, that process was moving along, I began to take another look at longevity, and I began to start doing some meetings in my local hometown, and I just really began to invite people to the meetings and just getting more engaged with it. And as I did that, my check quickly began to grow. And I would say that it took me longer to get my check to $1,000 than it did to get it to $5,000. And the reason that is because when you're doing it by yourself, that's the time that you're growing from the $100 mark to the $1,000 mark. But the minute that you get 4 or 5 people underneath you that are trying to help you move this thing along, your check quickly will grow from $1,000 to $5,000. And I've seen that in evidence with my own eyes.
Brandy, I first met you at a USA Prepares meetup. And, and so you came to a meetup, and Dr. Joel Wallach was there, and he gave a presentation, and you seemed to get a lot of interest, and people signed up. Is that right?
Yes, sir. That was in 2013, and that was the very first expo that I had ever worked. And we actually signed up 47 people at your event with orders that one weekend.
Was that a good result?
That was fantastic results. That was probably one of the best shows I had ever had.
And what do you attribute that to? What do you attribute? And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to figure out what is the common thread among people, so that if someone's thinking about joining with you, signing up with you, what kind of people did you meet at the Get Prepared Expo that signed up?
Well, the kind of people that I met there were kind of people that take charge of their own health. They take charge of their own life. They're not waiting on a doctor to tell them how to fix it. They are, they're pro self. They're always looking to better themselves. They're always looking for a better answer. They're looking for the truth. They're looking for honesty, and they had a load of integrity. And that's my kind of people.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And did you find that some people just said, you know what, I just want to buy the product. I am not really interested in being in business? Has that ever happened?
Absolutely. Oh, yes, sir. We run across that sometimes more than we do the distributors, which is fine. I love my preferred customers. They build my volume. They help my business grow. They're notorious about getting better and then running out and telling their friends, which we love that. And what's another phenomenal thing about those kind of folks is they don't think they want to do it as a business. They get in there, they take the products for 2 or 3 years, and this is not in every case, but in a lot of cases, they take the products for 2 or 3 years. They see their bodies changing before their very eyes. They get healthy, they get to feeling better, and they call me up and say, hey, I want to pay the $25. I'm ready to start making some money doing this.
Mm-hmm. Brandy, you were cleaning houses, and
yes, sir.
At the same time, I understand that you started this or you paid the $6 to join Longevity, which is now $25. Are you now at the point where you don't have another income? This is it?
This is it. This is exactly what I do. I make very, very good. I'm, like I said in the very beginning, I'm living on a beautiful lake, a lake that I once, when I was in the first grade, I took a school bus around this lake, and I lived on the other side of 75 in the mobile home. And I said to myself, one day I'm going to have a lake house over there on that side. And by the grace of the good Lord and Longevity, affords me to do that. So, yes, sir, it has paid me very handsomely, and it is my only source of income.
Brandy Brogden, when we come back, I'd like you to answer this question, if you don't mind. Are you a self-made woman? Did you do this through hard work and diligence and persistence? Is your result a result of that, or did you win the lottery? We'll be right back. Class, Brandy Brogden's with us. I know Brandy Brogden. She's been to Missouri many times. She's been to a lot of our expos. She's been to many of our meetups. And so it sounds to me like she's a self-made lady. Brandy, did you win the lottery, or did you do this through hard work, diligence, effort, persistence, and so forth?
Well, I certainly didn't win the lottery, Vincent. I would have to say it was definitely the hard work, the persistence, the tenacity, the keep on keeping on. One person at a time, nose to nose, belly to belly, doing these expos, doing the meetups, doing local meetings, weekly meetings, is what built my business, sir.
Okay, and so you have a really nice home on the lake, and you've got an expensive SUV. And Brandy Brogden, let me say it this way, and if I'm being personal, you just say, I don't want to tell you. I mean, that's okay, and that's fair. Sure. But are you, as part of this business, I believe that you can take tax deductions that, well, the average villager doesn't take and can't take legitimately. So, and what are these? Well, home insurance premiums, you can take part of that. Mm. Your cell phone, your landline, the internet. If you buy a desk for your home office and chairs, and if you want to put a rug in there, if you want to redecorate, if you want wall hangings, whatever you want to do for your business, that's a legitimate business expense. You can do that. Your computer, all kinds of things. If your roof needed repair, you'd say, well, I've got, and I'm just going to pick the number 10. Let's say if you have 10 rooms or 5 rooms in your home. Well, if you have 10 rooms, you'd say, well, my office is one of those 10 rooms, and we had a roof repair, and so 1/10 of the roof repair is attributed to the business. And if you have lawn care, 1/10 of the lawn care, or if you have a 5-room home, 1/5 of the roof repair, 1/5 of the lawn care, and so forth, right? Do you do those things?
Absolutely, sir. I take advantage of every tax deduction I can.
Okay. Are you afraid of being audited? I'm not.
No, sir, I am not afraid of being audited. I don't take anything that's not allowed. I only do it by the book. Mm-hmm. There's so many tax deductions that we can use. If you follow the guidelines and the rules, there's no reason that you would have to ever go outside of the rule book.
I totally agree. And Doc Wallach said to me off air, and he can correct me if I misquote him, but it was like if you're growing your business, you shouldn't be paying taxes, meaning legitimately, because you're putting, you are building your business with, the revenue that you've generated, and you keep building, so you can legitimately avoid paying taxes. And so, and the tax laws class are written for landowners and business owners in mind. Okay, so the guy who has a job, is going to pay more taxes than a guy who has a business. All things being equal.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more, Vincent. Not only that, sir, I'm going to tell you just a brief story real quick. One of my very, very, very best friends, my daughter's fiance's mother, so it's going to be my daughter's mother-in-law one day. She has worked a job for 19 years at our local hospital, and they fired her about 2 days ago. No reason, just that they've decided that they're going to downsize the hospital. But really what the reason is her 20-year retirement mark is right around the corner. So today, the jobs that we go out and fill out applications and we think that we're going to be so proud to work for are not the jobs that were back in the day when our parents worked for a factory and you were there 25 or 30 years and you got a beautiful gold watch and a big plaque on the back of your desk wall, and everybody was so proud that you were there and you were so proud to walk through the doors every day. Unfortunately, that is not the same industries that we work for today.
My dad, when I graduated from the university, my dad suggested that I get a job with a big company. And the names would be like IBM, General Motors, Bell Laboratories at the time, AT&T, big company. Get a job, and then you settle within that company, grow with that company, and you can be there 40 years. And exactly what you said, get that gold watch, and everything will be good. Now you're loyal to that company's loyal to you. Well, actually, I'll tell you what my response was to my dad when we come back. Brandy Brogden is absolutely right. So Brandy Brogden is with us. Link on the website, usaprepares.com, instructors tab. And we're talking about starting your own business, family business, home-based business. So when I was going to school at the university, my dad said, Vin, study hard, work hard, and, you can get some security with a big company. 40 years you can spend with that company, get the gold watch. And I said, Dad, IBM's laying off thousands a week. Thousands. There's no such thing as security. Now, in his world, there was, but it changed really, really fast. So there used to be loyalty. Companies were loyal to the employees. The employees were loyal to the company. But then there's this new group of management, this new bunch of MBAs that would Masters in Business Administration. They would get in and say, well, we can make the bottom line more profitable. We don't work for the customer. We work for the shareholders. You want proof of that? Look at Sears, Roebuck and Company. They don't work for the customers. They told me that. A Sears store manager told me, Sears does not work for the customer. They work for the shareholders. It's really working for them. They're closing stores and laying off people in record numbers. Pretty soon there will be no more Sears. Mm-hmm. They're dead and they just don't know it. They're the walking dead. So as far as security, I don't think there is anything such as security except that you make for yourself. And how do you do it? How do you start a business? Well, I can tell you how you do it. It's really simple. You just say, I'm in business. That's all it takes. And you don't even have to say it out loud. You can say it in your own mind. I'm in business. Then you're in business. Now, if you want to do it the way Brandy did, a proven way, you can spend the now $25, right?
Yes,
then
sir.
What, Brandy? Spend the $25, then what happens?
You spend the $25, you come aboard, and basically what we do is we, myself and you, begin to spend a lot of time together. I do a conference call for my team Monday evenings every week. You begin to call me. We start looking around your area. We either will call some of your friends together, somebody that you may know that's not feeling well. We start putting in your brother, your sister, maybe a friend, the people at the coffee shop. We start growing your business little by little. As we're growing your business, your products will begin to become free. And then once your products are starting to be paid for, then you can start to see a little bit of a picture here. And as we begin to do that, then your friends start seeing you get healthier, and more people say, hey, how did you lose 30 pounds in 2 months? And then you say, hey, it's this new company I've joined, Longevity, and they have some really amazing products. You ought to try a few of them. We get your friends going, then they get their friends going, and then I help everybody all the way around. We start looking for some expos, maybe some small trade shows in your area. I come out. We do the trade shows. The one thing that I love about Longevity is when you're in business for yourself, you're not in business alone. And what I mean by that is if you have someone call you today and they order $300 worth of product, well, you do not have to do like some of the other companies out there and purchase a whole bunch of products and have an inventory at your house. That is really not suggested to do by Longevity because we have expiration dates on our labels, and the products expire, within a year. So what we like the person to do is place the order online or call Longevity, place the order for the person, and then Longevity will ship out the product to the person. You don't have to house the product. You don't have to send any refund if something goes wrong. If the shipping box gets crushed, you're not responsible for that. If the person simply don't like the way it tastes and want to get their money back or wants to try another product, you're not responsible for any of those things. So when I say you're in business for yourself, you are, but you're certainly not by yourself. Longevity gives you a wonderful, beautiful, up-to-date website. We have a call center at Longevity Corporate that you can call anytime. They have business builders that will help you build your business. It's actually a business building team that works with you to help you understand how to put all your people in a group. In network marketing, positioning your people is everything. And if you don't know how to do that, and what I say is if you treat it like a hobby, it will pay you like a hobby. So you really have to get in there and learn our compensation plan, and that is something that I will help you with. And in learning that, I will also teach you about structure and how to put the people where they need to go. I will also talk to you about talking to your people and letting them know about the certain elite positions that are available that you only allow certain people to go into. I will teach you everything that you need to know in that realm. We will become very good friends. A lot of times I travel to my friends' hometowns. I go to Canada 2 times a year to Halifax and work with Mr. Stedman Steeves. He's in USA Preparers Group. I've got to stay right there in their homes. I've stayed on Native American Indian reservations where I get to go and work with the Native Americans and help them understand about nutrition and diabetes and how that you can change your life. You can change your soil outside by using the minerals in the soil. So there's so many ways to grow your business at Longevity. We now have services where you can get cell phones, you can do home loans, not home loans, but you can do loans where you receive commission off of loans that people do. There are many, many avenues at Longevity. If you don't have to be just a vitamin and mineral person like myself, you can be in jewelry, you can be in scrapbooking, you can be in clothes, coffee. We are the second largest coffee baron in the world. Every cruise ship that's out there has Longevity coffee on it. So there are many, many ways to grow your business at Longevity. But most of all, we will become very good friends, and I will help you. I will help you do it. I will never turn a person to their own devices or ever sign them up and leave them out there. One of the biggest things in network marketing, the biggest faux pas, the biggest things that we can do that really cuts our throat is sign up people and never call them back. Because what happens is they go in their own devices, they go on the computer, then they get mad at you, and then they call corporate and say, well, she never called me or he never called, and I want to sign up with somebody else. Well, that will not happen if you call the people that you sign up. So in other words, if I do an expo, and I put the order in the computer, I like to call my people back and say, hey, I got your order in the computer. Your total is this. Your products will be coming on this date, and here's your tracking number. Now, when your products come in, Mrs. Jones, I want you to call me so that we can go over every one of your products. I want you to have a magic marker out. I want you to write down on the tops of your lids how to take everything, and I want to make sure that they understand exactly how to take the product, because that will stop somebody in their tracks. A confused mind does nothing. So the first thing you want to do is stay in touch with your people. Then once their products come in and they're taking their products about week 3 of that first month, you want to call them back and let them know that you can help them save an additional 8% just by going on what we have called auto ship. So by you staying engaged with your new customer or your new associate, that's going to let them know how much you care about them, and people will spend more and do more with you when they see that you really care and you're not just in it for the first initial sale.
You're absolutely right. I was asked to be on a, what would you call this? A pledge drive years ago. And so I didn't really want to do it, but I said, okay, I'll do it. So I went on the air, and this was on another network, and I did a pledge drive. But I said to the network, I'll do this, but reluctantly, but I want the names and the phone numbers of each person who makes a pledge by the end of the day. And by the end of the day, I got that, and I just sat down in the studio and I started making calls. And I called everyone who pledged. People couldn't believe it. They just couldn't believe that they got a phone call thanking them for making a pledge. So you're absolutely right. As a matter of fact, class, one of your instructors was one of the guys that I called. He made a pledge to a network, and he and I hit it off. He's been to our farm. He's been here many times. He stayed overnight here, and he was a guy that made a pledge on a network. We like each other, and he's one of your instructors. Ed Marvini is his name. You've heard him. He's designed our website. Good guy. So, yes, it takes time. You build relationships. Who should not be involved in this type of a business, Brandy Brogden? Who would you say, you know what, I don't think that's going to work for you? Who would that be?
Well, Vincent, that's a good question, but right off the top of my head, I can't think of anybody unless they're just absolutely opposed to what the good Lord made our bodies out of, and that's nutrition. You know, unless it's somebody that's got a closed mind, you know, I really can't think of anybody that this business would not be an amazing opportunity for.
Okay. So, Brandy, how do you want people to contact you should they decide to do this?
Absolutely, Vincent. That's a great question. They can call me right on my cell phone. And I have an 800 number, which is 855-WALLACH, WALLACH. And that's 855-WALLACH, WALLACH. Or they can also call me on just my cell phone number, and that's 615-389-7733. 615-389-7733. Either way, I'll take the call.
When I call you, that's the number I use, 615-389-7733. So, Brandy, if someone calls you, if someone wants to start this business, one thing they can't do is they can't avoid the phone, right? They have to call back, right?
Absolutely.
When we come back, would you give us some tips for getting started? Okay, so a person calls you up, you sign them up, they pay their $25, and please tell us again, then what happens?
Okay, absolutely, I'd love to. Yes, sir.
Yep, right after this break. Class, Brandy Brogden's with us. I'll spell her name, Brandy. Last name, Brogdon. And we've said on this broadcast, class, that there's no such thing as job security. So if you want to pursue this longevity path and pay the $25 one-time fee, you've made your first tax deduction right then and there. now you are in business, absolutely for sure. Can't even be challenged by the IRS. You're in business, okay? And then if you want to dress for success, that new outfit, that shirt, that dress, the pants, the shoes, the belt, etc., are all potential tax deductions. Brandy, what's the next step?
Great question, Vincent. Call me. I will get you in touch with a great company that makes Dr. Wallach's tools, which are his CDs and his books. We will talk about your website. I will walk over your website. You get a free website with Longevity. I will show you how to sign up, folks. I would love to do three-way calls with you and your friends or your prospective customers or just a person that you may have met at Walmart because they've got a brace on the knee and you were standing there talking to them and then they decide that they want to listen to what Dr. Wallach has to say. So you just get those guys on the phone. You guys call me. We'll get Dr. Wallach on the phone. We'll find out what that guy needs for his knee, and we will get you guys in business. It is so easy. It's not even funny, Vincent.
Yeah. People ask me how old I am, and when I tell them, they think I am younger than I am. I'm 65, and that's because I've taken care of myself for many, many, many years, not doing stupid things, not abusing my body, and taking supplements. So, yeah, you can do it too. And I actually challenged, you were there when this happened. Doc Wallach came to one of the meetups, and I was sitting down at a restaurant booth with him at the meetup. And I asked him, I said, did they send you down here to check me out? And he said, yeah. Did you know that the GCN sent him to Missouri to check me out? Did you know that?
Well, I didn't know all the whole story, but actually Ted Anderson called me one day and said, I got this guy I want you to check out over in Springfield, Missouri. So you fly over there and you meet this guy named Vincent Finelli. He runs this show called the USA Preparers Show. I think you guys are going to really hit it off, and I just can't be more happy that Ted introduced us. And, and Genesis loves you, and they love your message, and I'm just so thrilled that I'm a part of the Vincent Finelli USA Preparers Show.
Yeah, you absolutely are. You're an instructor. And class, I wouldn't suggest that you do anything that I wouldn't do. And I signed up. And Brandy takes care of me. And I don't make a big deal about it, and I probably should, that it works. It absolutely works. We take the supplements. And Brandy, when I see someone who I think a friend, okay, who is in a health challenging situation, I'll say, tell you what, why don't you try this? And I will literally give them the essentials. It's called Beyond Tangy Tangerine, a canister of it. I'll give it to them, and I'll say, here's how you take it, here's what you do, and I want you to tell me how it works. And then I call them back, and they say, how's it going? They go, I feel I got more energy. Okay. Well, that's good, because that's what you're supposed to have. And, Doc Wallach said to me, I was at a meetup, he was there, and I was telling, this was years ago, I said, gosh, I spent a lot of time on the computers preparing for the broadcast, a couple hours before, a couple hours during, I'm looking at the screens, boy, my eyes are burning. He said, I can fix that. And my response was, mentally was, really? Are you kidding me? And he said, oh yeah, just take de-stress, D-stress, D-stress. I'll fix you right up. And I'm thinking, yeah, really? You know what? It works. So I just saw during the broadcast, I got a call from a neighbor who I gave a bottle of de-stress to and another bottle, and it works for him too. So Brandy, I'd like to broadcast more about this. We'll get in more detail in the subsequent broadcast about how to start your home-based business. Now, we talked about, the business portion of it. And that's a big portion because you can supplement your income. And ultimately, you can get your supplements covered by being in business. And the tax deductions are extraordinary. And I take them all. I do. And I'll teach you how to avoid the audits and how to prepare for the audits and how to survive the audits. Brandy Brogden, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Mr. Vincent. Have a wonderful, blessed weekend. Thank you so much for having me.